Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be a $50 deck tech. When I say $50, I mean that is an overall deck cost. Both shipping and commanders that are $10 or less are going to be included in that cost, but basic lands will not be. Decks on this channel are built to be fun, inexpensive, and focused. If you want to learn more about what a focused commander deck is, check out this video here. On this deck tech, I'm going to take you through its strategy, the tactics, and how this deck wins. This show and episodes like this one are possible because of viewers like you. So if you're looking for some easy ways to help support the show, make sure you like this episode and share it with friends. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Thank you to everyone who's already purchased our merchandise, it really does help support the channel. Another easy way to support this channel is by using our TCGplayer affiliate links. So make sure that you're looking for those links in the description whenever you're buying a deck or just individual cards. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. And this episode's actually a patron selected deck tech. Once a month, patrons get to vote on what commander that they'd like to see in an upcoming deck tech. Whatever commander gets the most votes, wins. And the commander they chose was Massacre Girl. Massacre Girl is a 4/4 human assassin with menace that costs 3 black. When she enters the battlefield, each other creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and whenever creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Essentially, Massacre Girl is a board wipe from your command zone. Initially, she only gives creatures -1/-1, but for each creature that dies, the others get smaller until they die too. This effect is going to snowball until there's nothing left on the board but her. Now we really need to make sure that we can get this ball rolling by having some small creatures on the field for her. So what's our strategy with this deck? Well, we're going to fill the board with creature fodder and wrath away. Again, the more small creatures that we get on the board, the bigger the impact that she has when she comes down. It's going to be hard for our opponents to keep anything on the board when we always have access to a wrath. And then how do we win with this deck? Well, we're going to drain out our opponents, or we're going to use their own creatures against them. Massacre Girl is fantastic at clearing out the board, and we can use this to our advantage. As with all Commander's Quarters decks, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics that show you how the deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's get started with tactic number 1, ramp it up. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2 and tap and sacrifice it to search our library for a basic land and put into play tapped. Next up, we've got Guardian Idol, Fractured Power Stone, and Prismatic Lens, each of which cost 2 and tap for a colorless. Guardian Idol may enter the battlefield tapped, but we can also turn into a creature if we need to. And if we really need to, we can use Prismatic Lens to filter our mana. Next up, there's Mind Stone, which also costs 2 and taps for 1, but we can also pay 1 and tap and sacrifice it to draw a card. And then we've got Sphere of the Suns and Charcoal Diamond, each enter the battlefield tapped and can tap for a black, but Sphere of the Suns can only do this 3 times. Next up is Worn Power Stone, which does cost 3, and it enters the battlefield tapped, but it more than makes up for that since it taps for 2. And finally, there's Unstable Obelisk, which only taps for 1, but we can also pay 7 and tap and sacrifice it to destroy target permanent. Mono black decks can definitely struggle against certain types of permanents, so this can really come in handy. But outside of these, we've got some other ways that can help ramp us. Let's go through them now in tactic number 2, keep it going. First up, there's Bantu's Monument, which makes all of our black creature spells cost 1 less to cast. On top of that, whenever we cast a creature spell, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. This card can especially come in handy since we're going to be recasting our commander quite a bit. But we've also got some big ways to ramp us when our creatures die with Sifter of Skulls and Pitiless Plunderer. Sifter of Skulls says, whenever another non-token creature you control dies, put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature token onto the battlefield. And those Scion tokens have sacrificed this creature, add colorless to your mana pool. So not only can these Scions ramp us, but they can also be creature fodder for our commander. Now we're not running too many non-token creatures in this deck, but Sifter of Skulls can still make a difference in the right situation. A much bigger way to ramp us comes with Pitiless Plunderer, because whenever another creature we control dies, it's going to create a treasure token. So this even counts our non-token creatures dying as well, which is a huge difference. When we use our commander to wipe the board, we're going to get a ton of value back. But what are some of those creature fodder pieces for our commander? Let's go through them now in tactic number 3, bring a buddy. First up, there's Dowsing Dagger, which is going to give one of our opponents 2 0/2s. On top of that, it's going to transform whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player. It transforms into Lost Veil, which can tap for 3 mana of any 1 color. So not only does this create 2 tokens for our commander to kill, but also helps ramp us. Another piece of fodder for us is Reassembling Skeleton. It's only a 1/1, so that's perfect for our commander, and we can pay 1 and a black to return it from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So this is always a great repeatable way for us to start that snowball effect. Another way is Dreadhorde Invasion, which has at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and amass 1. Now this zombie army is going to keep growing unless we kill it, but we can definitely time this right with our commander, and we also have ways to sacrifice that zombie army. If we use this correctly, it's a very cheap and efficient fodder generator for us. Another one of our fodder generators is a Crow and Horse. When it comes into play, we give one of our opponents control of it, and at the beginning of that player's upkeep, each of their opponents creates a 1/1 white soldier creature token. This can generate a ton of creature fodder for our commander to kill. Our commander doesn't care if we have the creature fodder or if our opponents have them too. So we're also going to be running Genesis Chamber, which says whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, if Genesis Chamber is untapped, that creature's controller creates a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token. So even if our opponents don't want small creatures, they don't have any choice. Anytime they cast a creature spell, they're going to get a 1/1 with it. And then Oketra's Monument is similar, but it's just for us. With it in play, whenever we cast a creature spell, we get a 1/1 1/1 white warrior, and Endrick's Star might be even better at helping us start that chain of death. With it in play when we cast Massacre Girl, we get 5 black thralls. She's easily going to wipe out those thralls as well as Endrick's Star himself. So at the very least, that's -6/-6 to all of our opponent's creatures. And again, the more of those creatures that die, the bigger that chain gets. But we're not quite done with our creature fodder just yet though. So let's go through some more ways to make some tokens in tactic number 4, I'm your fodder. First up, we've got Nuisance Engine, which we can pay 2 and tap it to make a 0/1 pest. Now 2 isn't too much for us to pay for some repeatable fodder, but we can do even better. Next up, we've got Throne of Empires, Acorn Catapult, and Trading Post, which can each do it for 1. These kinds of fodder generators are fantastic since we can activate them whenever we want. We can hold up our mana for them and use them exactly when we need to. But an even better version of these might be Mirror Turbine, which we can activate for free. By constantly being able to fill and refill the board with fodder, we can always control it with our commander. But to abuse our commander's effect, we need some setup to make sure we can get our ETB again. So let's go through some ways to do that in tactic number 5, Need a Hand. First up, there's Demonic Vigor, which says, when enchanted creature dies, return that card to its owner's hand. Even if our opponents don't try to kill her, we've got some ways to sacrifice her to recast her, and getting her back to our hand is a lot better than paying that commander tax over and over again. So we're also going to be running No Rest for the Wicked. By sacrificing it, we can get back our commander as well as other creatures that died. Next up, we've got Blood Clock and Umbilicus, both of which do the exact same thing. They say at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player returns a permanent they control to its owner's hand unless they pay 2 life. So not only can this hurt our opponents, but it can really help us get our commander back. But the best way for us to get our commander back is going to be the Golden Pig of this deck. The Golden Pig is going to be the number 1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Erratic Portal. It's an artifact that costs 4 and it has pay 1 and tap it, return target creature to its owner's hand unless its controller pays 1. This card is very flexible and can come in really handy in this deck. Essentially for just 1 mana, we can return Massacre Girl back to our hand whenever we need to. If all goes according to plan, essentially we just pay 6 each turn to wipe the board. This can also be used to save her or another one of our key pieces from removal as well. And on top of that, it can force our opponents to keep up mana unless they want one of their creatures bounced. This card works fantastically in conjunction with our commander, and that's what makes it the Golden Pig. But what are some ways for us to get value without recasting our commander at all? Let's go through them now in tactic number 6, Stay Put. First up, there's Kaya's Ghost Form, which says when enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So with this on our commander, when she dies or is put into exile, she comes right back. Again, our opponents might see this one coming, so they might not try to get rid of her. We do have some sacrifice effects to get around that though. On top of that, we've got some surprise effects like Undying Evil, Supernatural Stamina, and Abnormal Endurance. Each of these makes it so that when Massacre Girl dies, she comes right back. And then we've got some flexible auras with Unhallowed Pack, Unholy Indenture, and Shade's Form. Essentially with any of these on our commander, when she dies, she comes right back. But where these can really come in handy is by gaining control of our opponent's best creatures. If we put one of these on our opponent's creature and then wrath the board, we're getting that creature. Again, these cards are flexible so we can use them for whatever situation we need. A more direct way to get our commander's ETB though comes from Voyager Staff and Synod Sanctum. By paying 2 and sacrificing Voyager Staff, we can blink Massacre Girl. In Synod Sanctum, we have to be a little more careful with, but it can still be very effective. By paying 2 and tapping it, we can exile target permanent we control. And then by paying 2 and sacrificing it, we can bring those exiled cards back. Just make sure that you have extra mana available for this just in case. The last thing that you want is to have your commander permanently exiled with this deck. At a certain point with this deck though, you're going to have enough mana that you can even just keep casting your commander from the command zone. So you can even just keep using this to keep getting her off the field without actually sacrificing it. But what are some ways that we can draw into all these great cards? Let's go through some ways that can help us with that in tactic number 7, I Can Dig It. First up, we've got Dusk Legion Zealot, which when it enters the battlefield, we draw a card and lose 1 life. This essentially replaces itself, and it's great sacrifice fodder. Up next, we've got Skull Tap, Alder's Reap, and Costly Plunder, which essentially do the exact same thing. They're going to make us sacrifice a creature, but we get to draw 2 cards. Again, with this deck, we've got plenty of sacrifice fodder for these. On top of that, there are also plenty of times that we actually want to sacrifice our own commander. We're also going to be running some other black draw spells though, like Sign in Blood and Read the Bones. With Sign in Blood, we can draw 2 cards for 2 life, and Read the Bones is the same thing, but we get to scry 2 first. And then Ancient Craving and Ambition's Cost are bigger versions of these with 3 life and 3 cards. And then there's Siphon Mine, which is a fantastic spell in Commander. Essentially, each of our opponents discards a card, and we draw 3. And finally, we're going to be running Shadows of the Past and Harvester of Souls, which each benefit us whenever we wrath the board. Shadows of the Past lets us scry 1 anytime a creature dies, so this can really help us dig through our deck for the exact card that we need after a wrath. And then Harvester of Souls says whenever another non-token creature dies, you may draw a card. So even though this doesn't count tokens, it can still provide us a ton of value. But sometimes drawing cards and scrying isn't enough. Let's go through some ways to get the exact card that we need in tactic number 8, Tutor Time. First up, we're going to be running Diabolic Tutor, which is just a standard tutor for 4. Tutors can help us get us the exact card that we need for the situation that we're in. If we need to make tokens, this can get us a generator. If we need a way to bounce our commander, this can get us that too. And it can even get us one of our finishers, but we'll go through those later. Another tutor that we're going to run is Final Parting. It says search your library for 2 cards, put 1 into your hand and 1 into your graveyard. So at the very least, we can get value out of that second card with Reassembling Skeleton. And if we want, we've got an even bigger way to get creatures back. With a couple of the key pieces in play, we can easily finish off all of our opponents at once. Let's go through some of those key pieces in tactic number 9, Feeling Drained. First up, we've got Zulaport Cutthroat, which says whenever it or another creature we control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. And then Vindictive Vampire is very similar. It says whenever another creature we control dies, Vindictive Vampire deals 1 damage to each opponent and we gain 1 life. So the more creatures that we have when we wrath the board, the more life our opponents are going to lose. And that 3 toughness on Vindictive Vampire does come in handy so it can see more creatures die. Next up, we've got Falkenrath Noble, which counts on our opponent's creatures dying too. Because whenever it or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. So this does count our opponent's creatures, but it only hits 1 person at a time. And finally, there's Grey Merchant of Asphodel, which can be an absolute bomb in this deck. When it comes into play, each opponent loses X life, where X is our devotion to black, and then we gain life equal to the life lost this way. All those ways that we have to abuse our commander's ETB, we can use with Gary too. Now, draining our opponents is definitely one way we can finish them off, but we've got other ways too. So let's go through them now in tactic number 10. Heavy hitters. First up, we've got Grim Return, which says choose target creature card in a graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. Put that card onto the battlefield under your control. So this is another flexible card that we can use to get back one of our own creatures or one of our opponent's most powerful ones too. And then there's Mimic Vat, which has imprint. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you may exile that card. If you do, return each other card exiled with Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyard. And then you can pay 3 and tap it to make a token of that exiled card. It gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. With this deck, you're going to keep wrathing the board so you can always get the best creature with this. Whether that's Gary or one of your opponent's creatures, this can really come in handy. But we've got even more ways to steal some creatures with Puppeteer Click, Sepulchral Primordial, and Grave Betrayal. Puppeteer Click can get us 1 creature temporarily twice. The Primordial can get us the best creature out of each of our opponent's graveyards. And Grave Betrayal is absolutely insane in this deck. It says whenever a creature you don't control dies, return to the battlefield under your control with an additional +1/+1 counter at the beginning of the next end step. That creature is a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. So whenever we wrath, we get all of our opponent's creatures, but they're even stronger. Another way to get our opponent's best creatures is with Command the Dreadhorde. It says choose any number of target creature and or planeswalker cards in graveyards. Command the Dreadhorde deals damage to you equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards. Put them onto the battlefield under your control. So this is going to deal some damage to us, but we can pick and choose the exact creatures that we need to win. But there is another way that's not going to deal us any damage with Thrilling Encore. It's an instant that says put onto the battlefield under your control all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. So if we blow up the board or one of our opponents does, we get everything. But we don't even need to use our opponent's creatures to win though. Something simple like Blade of the Bloodchief can be very effective in this deck. It says whenever a creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. With the right setup, this can make even our smallest creature into a killing machine. Even if we just put this on one of our tokens, as long as we get 1 +1/+1 counter on them ahead of time when we cast Massacre Girl, they get huge. And finally, there's Yahenni, which can kill our opponents on its own. It has whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Yahenni. And then sacrifice another creature, Yahenni gains indestructible until end of turn. So we can sacrifice whatever creatures we need to ahead of time to make sure Yahenni lives. Again, those +1/+1 counters will essentially cancel out our opponent's creatures dying, but they won't cancel out ours. But with the amount of creatures that we're going to be killing, this can get huge quickly. On top of that, this is a fantastic sacrifice outlet for us. This deck is fantastic at controlling the board and demolishing our opponents in some big ways. But now that we've gone through the spells in this deck, let's go on to the mana base. First up, we've got Cradle of the Accursed, Foundry of the Consoles, and Spawning Bed. Each of these can be sacrificed for fodder. Next up, there's Cabal Stronghold, which we can pay 3 and tap it to add black for each basic swamp we control. And then we're going to be rounding out this deck with 31 swamps. And now that we've gone through every single card in this deck, let's do a quick price check. A quick reminder that our deck costs are calculated using TCGplayer optimization, optimizing with even heavily played and damaged cards because those cards need a home too. The average Massacre Girl EDH rec deck is going to set you back $364.70. Our deck is going to be much more affordable, coming in at $49.58. Again, the price of this deck is the price that I got for it on the day that I'm recording. If you want to see a breakdown of this deck's cost, check out the link in the description. Keep in mind that prices can and will fluctuate and change over time. But with these deck costs, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can. Again, Commander's Quarters decks are built to be tuned and focused within their budget, but there are always ways that we can improve on them. So let's go through some reasonable upgrades now to see what some of those ways just might be. First up, we're going to be adding in Forbidden Orchard and taking out a swamp. It's a fantastic free way for us to make some fodder. Next up, let's add in Pawn of Ulamog and take out Sifter of Skulls. It's just a more efficiently costed version and it counts itself. And then we're going to be adding in Black Market and taking out Sphere of the Suns. With this deck, Black Market can make us an insane amount of mana. Next up, let's add in Revel and Riches and take out Grim Return. Revel and Riches can also generate us a ton of mana, and it's also a win condition too. And then we're going to be adding in Conjurer's Closet and taking out Demonic Vigor. Conjurer's Closet can just be a more dependable way to get Massacre Girl's ETB. And finally, let's add in Blood Arts and take out Skull Tap. It's just another effective way at finishing off opponents. And with that, our show is coming to a close, but I really want to hear about your thoughts on these picks, so why don't you let me know in the comments below. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Links to our social media accounts can be found in the description. Also in the description below is a link to the Commander's Quarters Patreon page, and I just want to say a quick thank you to the patrons who have subscribed so far. There are many benefits to being a patron for the Commander's Quarters, including being able to vote on future Commanders for deck techs. There's even a general level tier where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. I truly couldn't do this without all of your support, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, check out some of our other episodes on budget deck techs, Quest for Quarters episodes, Commander topics, and Creators Quarters. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again, and have a good one.